Hello viewers, welcome to K Diagnostics. Dio here. Today we have a 2013 Chevy Cruze with a 1.8 liter. The customer complaint on this vehicle is that the check engine light remains on while the engine is running. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to confirm the customer's complaint. After confirming the customer's complaint, then we're going to connect the scan tool to the vehicle to see what kind of trouble codes we have in memory. Once we get the codes, then we will know what directions we can go so we can fix whatever that's causing the check engine light to remain on while the engine is running. So now let's go inside the vehicle and confirm the customer's complaint. Alright guys, so we are inside the vehicle. I'm going to start the engine so that we can confirm the customer's complaint. Alright, so right there, the engine is running and the check engine light remained on. So customer's complaint confirmed. And there's a message here on the dash that says AC off due to high engine temp. So it looks like the engine temperature is really high. Well, it says engine temp, but on the gauge it's actually showing a cold temperature. Okay, so that's good to know. Now that we have confirmed the customer's complaint, I'm going to connect the scan tool to the vehicle so that we can retrieve the DTCs. So I'm going to turn off the engine. Let me turn the key on. So here is the scan tool. So let's go to scanner. So right there, the scan tool has identified the vehicle. So let's click OK. Now let's do a whole system scan on it. So let's click on code scan so we can see what else is going on in the other modules. Alright, so the scan tool is done scanning all the control modules. So let's scroll down and see what are the trouble codes we have in the other modules. So we have 3 trouble codes in the body control module. We actually have 1 trouble code in the engine control module. The trouble code we have is P0128, engine coolant temperature below thermostat regulating temperature. So it looks like our thermostat is not working as it's supposed to. This is what's causing the check engine light to remain on. I mean, this should be a pretty straightforward code because this code is most likely caused by either a thermostat not working or a temperature sensor that's basically defective. So now what I want to do is let's just click on this diagnose button and see what we have. So I'm gonna click on this. Let's see if we have any TSBs. So this is good. We have 4 TSBs about this trouble code. There is, so here on the top repair we have a couple options. So when you have this trouble code, it says replace thermostat housing, bleed engine cooling system. So there might potentially be air in the cooling system, which can cause this trouble code to be set. And again, it keeps, we have a pretty long list. The other suggestions are replace engine coolant pipe. All right, so this is good information. This is good to know, but we're not just gonna fix cars by going with what they say here. Okay, we still have to do our test and make sure that whatever they're saying here is what the vehicle needs. So let's go to these TSBs and read about these TSBs. So let's read about the first one. Okay, so this is the first TSB and it says some aftermarket coolant reservoir or cap or a combination of ECM parts with aftermarket parts may cause a loss of cooling system pressure due to improper sealing and lead to reported engine overheat. To ensure proper cooling system operation, the OEM cooling system reservoir and cap are recommended parts to use when making any repairs to this system. So basically what they're saying here, they're recommending, if you have this issue, they're recommending using OEM parts. So the reservoir or the cap So if you have a defective cap can also cause the engine to overheat. So that's good to know. That's one thing we can check. Now let's read about the second TSB. And what else do we have here? It says keep the cooling system free of debris and corrosion to prevent premature water pump failure. Okay. So there might be some potential debris inside the cooling system. And where will this come from?
And the water pump was replaced like 20,000 miles ago.
Oh, okay, so the water pump was replaced. I hope you guys heard Steve in the background here. The water pump was replaced about 20,000 miles ago. So the water pump is fairly new. So this TSB is definitely not going to be applicable because the water pump was replaced. So that's good to know. Let's back out of here. Let's read the other TSB because there's 4 TSBs about this trouble code. So what else do we have? This one is suggesting just doing a cooling system flush. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, and again, guys, when you diagnose like any other trouble code, it's always good to be informed. Like you want to read and know and gather as much information as you can. That will help you determine the right course of action. So basically, with all the TSBs we read, the first one talked about the surge tank, I mean the reservoir, the cap, and then the other one about the debris in the cooling system. We know the water pump was replaced. This one is suggesting doing a cooling system flash. So now what I want to do next is I want to look at some live data. Okay, so let's go to the engine computer. 6-speed automatic. Okay, now let's go to data display. Let's grab the engine data. Since our trouble code is about the coolant temperature sensor, I'm just gonna focus on the coolant temperature sensor data PID. That's the only thing I'm gonna look at. I wanna look at that because as the engine is running, the temperature should increase. So I know the way the thermostat works is when the engine is running, so the engine is cold, you start the engine, it starts to run, and then eventually I think around 190 or 195 degree Fahrenheit, the thermostat opens, which drops the temperature, and then, you know, it cycles through. So we have to see this coolant temperature increase up to, I guess, 195 before the thermostat opens, okay? And once the thermostat opens, we should be able to see a drop on the graph of this O2, of this engine coolant temperature sensor data PID, okay? And this will tell us whether the thermostat is working well or not. So that's all I want to look at for now. So let's graph the ECT sensor. So right now the engine temperature is 107 degree Fahrenheit. So it's fairly cold right now. So I'm going to start the engine. And this temperature should start increasing, okay? So I'm gonna give it gas. All right, so I'm giving it gas. As you can see, it's taking forever to reach operating temperature. The engine temperature is increasing, but it's increasing very, very slowly. So this tells me that this thermostat is stuck open. So let's watch it a little bit for a couple more minutes. So right there. So I don't know if you saw that. The temperature went all the way to 172 degrees Fahrenheit. And after it got there, now our temperature is starting to drop, okay? So the temperature drops after the thermostat opens. So our thermostat is opening at 172 degrees Fahrenheit. So which is not normal, okay? This is a problem right over here. So this vehicle is going to need a thermostat, okay? So, I mean, that's all, guys. That's all it needs. Once we put a new thermostat on this vehicle will be fixed. We're gonna have to replace this thermostat housing, so the entire thermostat is gonna have to come out, okay? All right, guys, so this thermostat housing is defective. So the thermostat in here is bad. We have to replace it. And I already got the replacement part. So here is the new thermostat and its housing. So it's the whole complete part. So this is what we're gonna install, okay? So right over here, I hope you can see here. So we have these bolts that we have to undo. So the thermostat housing has 4 bolts. So 1, 2, and then 2 more here underneath this tube, okay? So let me show you the holes on the new one. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? So these bolts are what we have to remove so that we can get this thermostat housing installed, okay? So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna remove this bracket. So we're gonna undo this 10mm nut. So I'm gonna remove this nut first. So we're gonna get this bracket out of the way. Now I'm gonna disconnect this connector. So right over here. So this is disconnected. We're also gonna disconnect the temp sensor. So back over here, I hope you can see. So this connector here. Okay. All right, so we're gaining some room. So now I'm gonna disconnect this tube up here, okay? There is a tab here that you have to press. Once you press this tab and then you lift. So we got this tube disconnected. So now we're gonna disconnect these here hoses back here. Alright, so I got both hero hoses disconnected. So now I'm gonna disconnect this lower radiator hose. So this big hose over here, this is what I have to disconnect now.
We go around sometimes searching for them and can't find them. Yeah, I know.
Alright, so here comes the lower radiator hose. So I got all the hoses disconnected from the thermostat housing. So now I'm gonna undo these bolts to get the thermostat housing out. Alright, so now we're gonna remove these bolts.
You have an idea what size it might be?
Alright, so here comes the first bolt. I'm gonna put it over here. Now I'm gonna remove the second one. So right over here. So now we're gonna remove the last two on top of the thermostat housing. So this one. Alright, so before I remove these two bolts, I'm gonna have to undo the other tube here under this diverter valve. So this is the diverter valve for the secondary air system. So I'm gonna have to remove this diverter valve. So I'm gonna get it out of the way so I can get access to the tube that's under here. So I'm gonna disconnect this electrical connector. So I will get this electrical connector disconnected. I'm also gonna disconnect this tube. So this tube has some tabs, so you have to press this down and then push back. So we got these guys disconnected. So this has 2 bolts down here. So I'm gonna remove these 2 bolts so that we can remove this diverter valve. Alright, so here comes the diverter valve. So I'm going to put it over here. So everything is plastic on these new cars.
Isn't that great?
Yeah. It's awesome. Alright, so here comes the bolt for this lower tube. So I'm gonna put these over here. So I'm gonna remove this one. Alright, so here comes the thermostat housing. So right there. So here it is. Okay, so we're gonna get this out of the way. I'm gonna clean up the thermostat housing surface over here. Okay. So I'm gonna clean this up really well, and then I'll bring you guys back up so that we can install the new thermostat housing.
Right here.
Alright, so now I'm gonna install this thermostat housing. So this is gonna go down over here.
Go under and reach my hand in here. And I felt it, but it's still it's a little off here.
Alright, so now I'm gonna put the bolts for this tube down over here. So you guys won't be able to see, but I'm gonna put these 2 bolts down here.
Yeah, just stuck it the other day. It was 2-9 on Sunday, on Saturday. I know. Yeah, go through. You're not gonna go through so much. You did it on purpose, probably. How much is that? Yeah. Well, it's...
Alright, so now I'm gonna tighten these bolts for this lower tube.
Oh, you do?
So the torque spec for these bolts is 120 inch-pound.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, like driving around, I'll get like 18. Not bad. I know. Better than my truck. I know. I'm so.
Alright, so now we're gonna tighten the thermostat housing bolts.
Alright. You see how she. Should I start her up, Theo?
Yep.
Just put it in gear and rev it, you'll know.
That's good.
Good, right?
Yeah. It's not hissing anymore.
Yeah, otherwise it hiss.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could. I mean, when we did it before, you could feel all that air coming out of there.
Alright, so now I'm gonna reinstall these heater hoses back here.
So you put these on top?
So I'm gonna reinstall the first one.
Thank you.
Alright, so I'm gonna install the second one. Alright, so right there we got both heater hoses installed. So now we're gonna install this diverter valve. Actually, before we install that, we're gonna install the lower radiator hose. So the lower radiator hose can be installed. So right there. Let's install this baby. So the lower radiator hose is installed. So now we're gonna install this diverter valve. Alright, so now I'm gonna install this diverter valve. So let's get this diverter valve back on.
Seconds away from just getting that thermostat taken care of. And Theo wants to make a video.
See all that shit that didn't. Right? No idea. So, this is my little project.
Alright, so I got the diverter installed. So everything is back on. So now we're gonna install this secondary air tube. So right there. So right there, that's installed. So I'm gonna reconnect this electrical connector.
This is the one that I need.
Okay.
This is the one.
So this bracket is gonna come down over here.
Put this to this.
Alright, so we replaced this tube over here with a regular hose because the plastic tube broke. Now we're gonna put this bracket back on. So this bracket is gonna go this way. Right there. So we're gonna put the nut for this bracket. And then this connector is gonna go over here. And then this connector is gonna go on this temp sensor here. Alright, so everything is put back together. So now we're gonna fill up the radiator and start the engine. Alright, so we filled up the radiator. So now I'm gonna go inside the vehicle and erase the trouble codes. After we get the trouble codes erased, then we will start the engine. And then we're gonna come back here under the hood and look around the thermostat housing to check for any leaks. So now let's go in the vehicle and erase the trouble codes. So let's clear the codes. So right there, we don't have any fault codes present. So now I'm gonna start the engine. So right there, the engine is running, the check engine light is off. So now let's go under the hood and look around the thermostat housing for any leaks. And right there, we're looking around the thermostat housing. Everything looks dry. There is no leak. So this is it, guys. This is gonna do it. This is fixed. So now let's go inside the vehicle and wrap up this video. Alright guys, we're here in the vehicle. As you can see, the engine is running. The check engine light is off. So everything is good. So now I'm gonna turn off the car so we can wrap up this video. Alright guys, so that's it. I'm gonna leave it right over here. This is how you remove and replace a thermostat on this Chevy Cruze. So I hope you like this video. If you do like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't, give it a thumb down. But if you do, you gotta tell me why so we can make better videos in the future. If this is your first time here, subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell so you can get notified every time I upload a new video. Thanks for watching guys. See you next time.